So I want to welcome you to the Friday Sex and Healing Relationship Interactive Webinar. I'm Debbie McRae. I am a licensed therapist and a CSAT, and I work at Family Strategies Counseling Center in Mesa, Arizona. And my specialty is working with individuals and running groups that focus on healing the betrayal trauma and the relational trauma that individuals experience as a result of their loved ones' addictions. So I always bring to this webinar things that show up in my office and in group because I feel like it's so applicable because this is the real world and that's what I deal with from day to day. We're going to talk about in this webinar and the next time we come, this is another two-parter, we're going to talk about disconnection versus connection in recovery. So this is in the coupleship. So this is with the betrayed partner and the addict partner, because one of the goals as we get into the recovery work is we want there to be a kind of a coming together again, working on the attachment, because we know prodependence is all about attachment. So here's what I see showing up. I've got this betrayed partner who approaches her addict partner with things like, you know what are you doing to create safety for me? Or I can't trust you. I need to trust you. What are you going to do so that I can trust you? Or they might make a suggestion on how they need to be doing their recovery. And in that moment, the addict partner gets triggered. And so what they do is they go into their shame. So we've got the betrayed partner in safety seeking. We've got the addict partner in shame. And so the addict partner will then respond with things like, you need to stay in your own lane. You need to do your own recovery and quit worrying about me. Or you don't support me in my recovery. You don't even acknowledge what I'm doing in my recovery. And so the couples then go into their own stories. So these are the things we start telling ourselves. There are automatic thoughts that they're distorted. They have some truth. They are then kind of connected. We fill in the gaps because that's how the brain works. And then we start fighting each other. We disconnect because we're in our stories and we're caught in this cycle of disconnection. And it's very difficult in those early days and months of recovery for the addict partner and the betrayed partner to get out of that cycle unless they understand what's going on. So as a reminder, Prodependence looks at addiction and the partners whose loved ones have addiction through the attachment lens. And we really want to embrace and focus on the fact that we all want to maintain and have these intimate connections, that's what helps us survive and thrive. It's one of our three basic needs in life, the other being food and water, sustenance, shelter, and then human connection. So what happens is we know that in addiction, oftentimes that attachment that should be safe and secure is disrupted. So we then start to go into that feeling of oftentimes rejection, abandonment for the betrayed partner, again, rejection, abandonment, even for the addict partner. And so what will happen oftentimes is in those early days before the betrayed partner is really in their recovery is they make some loving attempts to try to reestablish that safety and security. We call it safety seeking. And today we're going to spend some time talking about this disconnection that occurs and how the betrayed partner goes into safety seeking, how to recognize it and get out of it. So the betrayed partner at some point in their healing journey will begin to recognize their own safety-seeking behaviors. These are things that behaviors they go into to make sure that it's okay to move towards their partner. At some point, the betrayed partner has to make an intentional choice that they're going to step out of those safety-seeking behaviors that are less effective. They've got to understand their triggers that take them into their safety-seeking behaviors. They need to identify their safety needs, and then they need to learn how to communicate them effectively. So we're going to talk about the communication piece of it next time we get together. If we can do this, if we can get that betrayed partner out of this, then I find that they are also stepping out of some of their trauma. And a lot of times this is also occurring simultaneously while they're in crisis. And so as a therapist, I'm working with my individual clients even group members that can't control their triggers and are doing a lot of safety seeking, my number one goal is to help them regulate and help them understand what's happening. Once we can get the betrayed partner to understand to do healthier safety seeking, the kind that will create connection, then what happens is we also see that when they approach the addict partner, then they're doing it in a way that the addict partner can not only hear, it's very clear, and also the addict partner's shame doesn't get triggered. So it's a process, and we have to acquire those skills and those tools. I often talk about willingness and capacity. A lot of people have the willingness. I'm really trying to make a connection. I want to connect, but we don't have the capacity in the early days of recovery. That would be the skills, the tools, the knowledge, the awareness. And that's part of what the recovery journey is about. So here's why the betrayed partner needs to go into their safety seeking. There's certain safety needs. And if the addict partner can understand this, it is so helpful. So first of all, they need to have and feel a sense of safety within the relationship. And again, this is a day-to-day journey. It takes time. And the goal is that we start reestablishing safety, and it begins to build and build and build and build. Again, it requires that both the betrayed partner and the addict partner are willing to do the work and working on gaining the capacity. Next, the betrayed partner needs to feel like their addict partner is willing to change. This helps them feel like things will get better. If you're telling me you're willing to change, and I see through your actions that you're working on changing, then it creates safety for me. Another thing is the addict partner willing to make a serious commitment to behaving differently. That means choosing to step out of the addiction, doing what you need if you have a slip to get back on track, seeking out the right kind of help. All of those things create safety for the addict partner. Another one is that for safety, the betrayed partner needs to feel like repairing the relationship is the number one priority for the addict partner. Now, along with recovery, right, they also need to know that, hey, I care about you. I want this to work. I'm going to do whatever I can to repair this. I realize that my addiction has affected you, and this is part of my healing that I'm doing while I'm in recovery. And like I've said, oftentimes when these safety needs aren't met, then we see the betrayed partner going into their safety seeking behaviors. So let's talk about what safety seeking is. I talk about the continuum. Safety seeking occurs when the betrayed partner feels like they're not safe. And so they want to move towards their partner to reestablish safety and connection. And so they go in with these best attempts, right? I'm going to go in and try something to see if this will work. Will this help us connect? Is this going to repair what's going on right now? This disconnection I'm feeling, this rejection and abandonment, all these awful feelings that I'm experiencing in my body. And oftentimes these efforts are less than ideal. And they really are just attempting to try to reconnect. So we don't label this as good or bad. How we look at it is there are some safety seeking behaviors that are far more effective, while others are counterproductive. So I talk about the continuum, being that at one end, we've got some really healthy safety seeking behaviors, which would be, I go to my partner and ask to do a check-in a couple of times a week where we kind of go into, what are your struggles? What are you learning in recovery? Where are you at right now? Emotionally, physically, spiritually, relationally. What do you need this next week from me? That is so appropriate and so helpful in recreating connection. Also, it might be setting up, email addresses that have both of your names on them now, and having full access to passwords, all email accounts, things like that. And when you go to look at the emails, that the addict partner is aware of it as well. And you limit the time that you look at those things. Then at the other end, we have those that are less productive. They're counterproductive. And at the extreme end, they can even be abusive. So the betrayed partner might go and check, an email account multiple times a day. They might have Life 360 on their phone and on the addict partner's phone, and every hour they're checking it. And so it's taking them into that anxiety. It's throwing them into their limbic responses. So their brain can get hijacked all the way to the point where some women will rage and they can even be abusive. I've had clients report that they've thrown things, they've even hit the addict partner. And so that type of safety-seeking behavior, we consider that not allowed. That's abuse. And so we work on that. We work on regulating that and coming up with other ways to manage that anger and all those multitude of emotions that happen when rage occurs. So why does the addict partner, let me rephrase that. Why does the betrayed partner feel like they need to go into safety seeking? What's occurring internally for them? Well, one thing is fear. There is so much fear. So they're going into their fear cycle. And so oftentimes when I feel that fear, again, the stories I tell myself start to support that. So I start thinking about how much I've been abandoned, how much this feels like rejection, all the specific incidences that occur where I felt abandonment and rejected. They also feel shame. They feel unworthy, maybe because they haven't shown up the way they should have shown up in the relationship, or they're not, the type of person physically or sexually that they feel like their addict partner was seeking out. It might be that they're worried about making mistakes and then they make a mistake. So then they beat themselves up for that. There is a lot of self-doubt in so many areas. So that's another thing. They start to doubt, do I stay in this relationship? Am I able to stay in this relationship? Is my addict partner really going to recover? Can, he or she even get to that point where things are going to be back to, normal again, which there really never is normal. There is a new normal. And when they're both working recovery, I provide the hope to my clients that I see that the new normal can be far better than what you thought normal was in the past. Another thing is anxiety, that constant fear that something bad is going to happen or something bad is currently happening. And so this anxiety levels just get really, really high. So this might be the betrayed partner that comes in and reports, I just know something's going on. I just feel it, I know it. And so I've got to check in because he or she won't tell me. And so I'm going to go talk to all the people that know him that he talks to or she talks to, because maybe they have information. So again, that would be safety seeking because my anxiety is so high, I'm trying to bring it down. A lot of worrying about the future. So safety seeking is motivated by that. Is my partner really doing the work they need to do? And if they're not, then what's my future going to look like? I do have some clients that when they go into their stories, because their stories are really based in this principle of it's either all or nothing, and they go to the worst case scenario, and that is if he's not in recovery and doing this, and this, then I'm going to plan on leaving the relationship. And it's in the early days, and it may not even be a relationship that at that point warrants the betrayed partner leaving because there's not been enough time to assess it and to really look at what's going on. And then of course there's a lot of intrusive thoughts. There's a lot of mental pictures about how the addict partner did their acting out. And so that too can take a lot of these betrayed partners into their safety seeking. So what does it look like? Here's what I see happening. There's a period of time where the betrayed partner will start asking a long list of questions. They just need to know. I need to have every piece of the puzzle. My brain is telling me that unless I have every piece, then I'm not safe right now, here in this moment. So they're going to ask things like, where did it take place? When did it take place? How did it take place? What did you guys talk about? Did you, share emotional feelings? They might come back and go, how could you do this to me? What were you thinking? I can't even imagine how you could get to this point. Explain this to me. And so I do see betrayed partners when they get into these questions and they can't get out of that, they do kind of go down the rabbit hole. And lots of times, that's when I work with them on using their stabilizing tools. And we're going to talk about stabilizing tools in just a moment. The other thing is I see the betrayed partners constantly checking in with their partner. How are you doing? Did you have a slip today? Did you make that appointment to go see your therapist? Are you feeling okay? Have you experienced any shame? All those types of questions, well-meaning, however, because it's coming from that place of either fear, shame, anxiety, right? It ends up coming across to that addict partner as less than effective. Okay. The next thing is what you might see them doing is they're constantly checking on their partner. So I'm watching my partner to make sure the addict is doing their work. Do I see them doing their workbooks? I hear this a lot in my office. The betrayed partner will come in and say, I never see him working in his workbooks. That's, how do I know he's even doing recovery? And so then they'll kind of come in and ask some leading questions like, so how's your work going? Oh, what are you learning in your workbook? And so they're trying to figure out, how do I check on, you to make sure that you're actually doing recovery work so that I can feel safe and move towards you. They might even look through their partner's personal belongings. This is a really difficult situation. So I want to really emphasize to the betrayed partners that you do not look in their journals. You do not look into their workbooks. You do not, go through their text messages unless you have a boundary set in place around that is something that is part of the openness, honesty, transparency piece that the addict partner is providing for the betrayed partner. This is really important, especially in regards to the work that they're doing in their workbooks, because then the addict partner is going to constantly wonder if they can be really honest in the work they're doing and what they're writing and journaling about. So that's really important. And I have to do a lot of repair sometimes when this occurs. And I recognize that the betrayed partner, there are some times that they just know something's off and they're experiencing gaslighting, like the tables are getting turned back on them. They're being told they're not doing their work and they're not in recovery. They're being blamed and they feel like they're going crazy. So they've got to find the answer. Eventually, the answer always comes out. That's what I find. The truth always at some point shows up. And so there's other ways that while you're sitting in that discomfort and not knowing, that you can do some of your stabilizing tools. I've talked in the past about looking through phone records, checking on phone numbers. I believe this past year, somebody came in and said there was a lot of phone numbers I didn't recognize. So I started calling them to see who would answer, to see if it was a female voice. Oftentimes it's bank records. I'm trying to figure out money, where did it all go? So I'm checking all the money accounts. It could be also checking the history on the computer all the time and going there automatically. I have seen partners come in and say, my partner doesn't tell me anything. He or she won't even do check-ins with me. So I have to go to their friends, or I have to go to our church leader. I've got to go to a family member that they're close to and check in with them. And they're the ones telling me how my addict partner's doing. And that's not good either, because that's just going to create shame for the addict partner when they hear about it or find out about it. And it's going to set you up to not communicate as the betrayed partner directly with your addict partner. And that's really important that we learn to start to communicate. You might start obsessing about where your partner's at any one point. And that obsession can take you down the rabbit hole, take you into additional safety-seeking behaviors. You might constantly want to talk about all the troubles in the relationship with your addict partner. So every day, all you're talking about is the bad parts and recovery and what's not going right. And I tell my clients and my group members, you need to take a day off of recovery in regards to talking about it, not in regards to what you're doing and your recovery behaviors, but you don't have to spend every day in that partnership talking about the addiction and how to repair it and fix it and what's going wrong. So I love the idea of going out every week and taking a date, spending time together, doing something fun, and no recovery talk is what I say. Betrayed partners might manipulate time, attention, and situations. So what that would look like would be, I'm going to make sure that I never allow my addict partner to ever be home alone. So I make sure the kids are always there with him if I'm going to go out to the store. Or I ask somebody that I know to stop by the house when I'm gone to check in to make sure my partner's okay and my partner's not doing something they shouldn't be doing. Okay. Disclosing your partner's story to whoever will listen. the addict partner's story is their story. And yes, we do have to find that balance for the betrayed partner of finding support so you can find somebody to talk to. But this needs to be an effort that you work together on. Who do we share this with? Who can we trust with this really sacred and secret information that we want to maintain? Because that's part of recovery. We want to keep the addict partner out of their shame as well. And then lastly, oftentimes you find that disconnection occurs because knowingly and unknowingly, the betrayed partner might use some shaming and abusive language, especially the shaming. They may not mean to, but remember when I'm limbic and my brain is no longer connected to prefrontal and it's been hijacked, sometimes I say things and I do things that I wouldn't normally do because I'm not grounded. Okay, so the counterproductive things in summary that happen when you go into safety seeking. First of all, it can shut down the addict partner. So therefore, there's no connection. It can stop and slow down the progress you've already made, both of you, in your recovery work. Like I've said, it can be damaging, it can be counterproductive, and it may take some time for repair. So it can slow down the recovery process if it's ineffective, counterproductive, abusive. Okay, it will take the betrayed partner out of their window of tolerance. It takes them down the rabbit hole. It can take them days to recover. And so it feels like you're swimming upstream in recovery from your betrayal. It feels so hard and it feels like you're never going to get better. So it's very discouraging. And then it can increase the shame in the addict partner. It can create trauma responses even in both. We can even have trauma in recovery when we have these really difficult situations where there's a lot of disconnection. Okay, so what can the betrayed partner do? I'm just going to go briefly through some things. One is you've got to recognize and identify your own safety-seeking behaviors. I love journaling. Journaling is a really great way. So when you catch yourself doing safety-seeking, ask yourself the 4 W questions. Okay, why do I feel the need to safety-seek, right? When do I find myself safety seeking? Are there certain situations that I do it more often in? Where do I do my safety seeking? And what am I hoping to gain by it? So really get some clarity on that, because then we can figure out how to counteract it by doing other things. The other thing you need to do is you need to describe your plan for how you are going to accomplish stepping out of safety seeking. So those are those other measures. So if you've got your stabilizing tools and behaviors that you use, it could be reaching out to a friend. It could be journaling what's going on. It could be going and doing some exercise. We all have specific stabilizing tools that work for us. So understand what your stabilizing tools are. Recognize if there's any safety seeking behaviors that you're not willing to give up. And if there's some of that, take it into your group, take it into your therapist's office and figure out what that's about. What's the fear? What's the anxiety? What's going on that keeps your brain believing that it's got to do that or you're not going to be safe and secure. So if you are a betrayed partner and you're in your safety seeking and it is activating you, meaning you're triggered, you're outside your window of tolerance, you have to be intentional and decide that you're not going to do the safety seeking that is not helpful. And instead, you're going to identify some healthy ways, some healthier safety seeking. And we're going to talk about that next week as we talk about how to communicate and some ways to approach your addict partner when you feel a need to have some safety and you're seeking them out for safety. You need to consciously and intentionally turn to your stabilizing tools. So we look at a list of stabilizing tools. Again, you can find this list of stabilizing tools in Kim Buck and Rob Weiss's book, Practicing Prodependence. And in there, we have it listed in 4 categories. We've got physical, emotional, relational, and spiritual. And so if it's physical, I can go out and run. If it's relational, I can reach out to my group and ask for some support, some clarity, some ideas. If it's spiritual, I can maybe go out into nature and hike I can journal. I can listen to inspiring music. If it's emotional, then maybe I need to check in and ask myself, when was the last time I rested? Do I need to go do something for myself right now? Have I been giving to everybody else and filling their buckets, and my bucket is empty? So how can I fill my bucket? It's really important that you start to use these tools, because they're going to be ongoing, not only in your recovery, but you're going to use these skills lifelong in this process. So just so you know, when we get together the next time, what we're going to cover is we're going to talk about what causes the addict partner to disconnect, right? What's going on there for them, how to recognize when it's happening for the addict partner, and then how the addict partner can support the betrayed partner when disconnection's beginning to occur, and then what can the addict partner and the betrayed partner do together to reconnect. So we're going to talk about that next time. So I hope that's helpful. I know we mentioned safety seeking a lot, but oftentimes we don't really get into why it happens and what's going on internally for the betrayed partner, and then how we can step out of that safety seeking that's less effective.
And I so appreciate all of this information. And, and I think when you started out, disconnection versus connection in a coupleship, and, and addiction and all the wounds, cause such a disconnection. So, if the goal for the couple is to connect, then you have to do something different. And at the point of the fracture, first of all, addicts aren't really great at this to start with, and second of all, now there's been this fracture and distrust. So much of what you said, one of the things, and you said this more recently, was recognize any of the safety seekings that you're not willing to give up. And I thought that's a really interesting thing, because you to be able to pinpoint and go, yeah, I'm not willing to do that one, and it's because of my fear, or or whatever. But I also wondered about, and I think you the answer is probably because it's, you talked about willingness and capacity, and like I talked to lots of betrayed partners, but what I hear is they're safety seeking, but their attitude in this case, it's been men, so he's not been willing or able or whatever to really do the work to create the safety. So I feel like they get kind of caught in that, that loop, and they're still looking for him to do something different, and, working on how do I set the boundaries for my safety, regardless of what he's doing. Does that make sense?
Perfect sense. And we're going to cover that next week. And I
Okay.
love how you said it, caught in the loop. That's exactly what happens. We talk about the negative cycle, and it just, every time we go around and around and around, and we're so caught in it. And you're right. Boundaries is an essential key, not only the awareness and the tools, but one of those tools is we've got to have boundaries, even, the addict partner. Absolutely.
And the willingness to change, I feel like things will get better, and that, because I think it really is like there's no hope because we're caught in this loop, or I feel like I see him starting to change, and I'm using him and her, don't really, that's just for clarity, but I see things starting to change, sorry, and and can then have hope that things will be different. And so, and I think if there's that little bit of hope, then then there's a little bit more willingness, like, okay, there's a little hope, there's a little more willingness, a little hope,
Yes.
of course, when things get fractured, or somebody missteps, then it kind of resets it. But I hear this a lot too from partners. I didn't do it right. I mean, I've heard that probably a dozen times this week. Like, I know I should have done, and I'm like, please remove the should have, and I did it wrong and all of that, because whoever, planned on any of this, so give yourself some grace that you're doing the best you can, lean into the resources and tools, but there is, I mean, this is not what you expect when you get into a relationship. So it's heartbreaking to me, I guess, when partners go to the, I'm messed up. I should have done this. I didn't do this right. That kind of negative language. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah. It's so interesting you'd say that. I remember, I will experience this as a therapist. Client will walk in the door, they'll sit down on, the sofa, and they'll go, I did exactly the opposite of what you told me to do.
Oh,
And I made the biggest mistake, and I just can't believe I don't listen to you. And they go into that same thing. And I say, you know what? I actually believe that mistakes are a good thing and messing it up are a good thing. So what did you learn from this experience? Right.
mhm.
And okay, what do you plan on doing differently the next time this comes up? And we kind of explore it. I also talk about, well, what were you hoping to gain, of course, and accomplish in doing it the way you did? Help me understand that. And there's no judgment there because we're all learning. And so there's always a takeaway from every mistake we make. And that's one of the things that I really try to emphasize with the women that I work with. And that is, you're going to make mistakes, but bring it into group, bring it into the office, and let's learn from it and figure out how to move forward. So the shoulds we need to let go of, if possible, as betrayed partners, because we can always do it better, and we have mistakes that occur. So anyway, there's that. I think I'm going to go to the first question, and I'm going to just share it. So my partner, who's a sex addict, his new therapist has asked him to take a polygraph. We are a year post D-Day with 2 further discoveries and not had formal therapeutic disclosure yet, as his first CSAT said he wasn't ready yet. Isn't the polygraph to confirm the truth was told in the formal therapeutic disclosure? I'm confused. Why would his new therapist be wanting this? So there's several parts to this question that I want to address. Typically, polygraphs are done after going through a formal therapeutic disclosure. You are correct on that. In the situation you're in, I'm not sure where the 2 of you are at in your recovery, but one of the possibilities that I will open up to my clients and other therapists in our office will is, if you're wondering and curious and need more information from your partner's therapist, it's okay to go in and sit down as a couple with the therapist to kind of go over all of this and talk about, why are you recommending a polygraph now? We haven't done, our formal therapeutic disclosure, and to let it be known that your preference is that you do that disclosure and follow it up with the polygraph. Some places do polygraphs, remember, some places don't. Everybody approaches it differently. And so my recommendation is get more information regarding why, your husband's therapist is thinking we need to do a polygraph before formal disclosure, and then let your needs be known. Any thoughts on that, Tammy?
I do. And sorry, Dr. Rob had an expert consultation and the person couldn't get into the Zoom. So they were called. So thank you for picking up the ball. So, so I've done a lot of research on polygraphs. Polygraphs measure stress, not honesty. So when people say, to confirm the truth was told, somebody who is high anxiety, can ding on a polygraph that they failed, even though they're telling the truth. Somebody who exhibits low stress and lies well, can pass. So really be clear about what you're seeking from a polygraph. They are often more of a coin flip. I've done a lot of research. I'm not going to get into a lot of that here. I did a lot of research. So Debbie uses somebody, they know how to use somebody, they do it regularly. It's somebody they trust. That's a very different situation. I have people that are doing the do-it-yourself polygraphs, or they're, no, I'm not kidding. You can't believe the horror stories I hear, or or they're using somebody who, is let's say a police officer who has done other things, but it still isn't, it isn't somebody who understands this. This is complex stuff. So
yeah, I'm going to share something really quickly. Here's what I have found beneficial from the polygraph, not the actual polygraph. It's that our polygrapher does a very extensive psychosocial sexual interview. And because I've sat in on the formal therapeutic disclosure and I'm aware of, all the information, it's very helpful for me to go through and see what was reported to the polygrapher during that particular, interview. And I have picked up on some information that either the addict forgot, and of course that can happen. And so that our rule is you report that within 12 hours, just like you would a slip, because memory does come back at times because of the nature of addiction, or they intentionally withhold certain things. And I've had that happen. And so it was helpful because then we have to kind of work through that. So I found that it helps me on the congruency part as far as the information goes.
That's a very different scenario than what most people are experiencing. I'm just saying. So you have a whole process. It's very different than, I get people calling saying, I need to find a polygrapher, like they're looking for it themselves. So, anyway, so enough on that one. We've got more questions. So, but thanks for clarifying and how complete your process is. So my SA partner has been reporting no slips, relapses, and total honesty at our check-in since D-Day. Wow, that's amazing. We have an agreement. I can check his emails and messages, and I wasn't being snarky. I was like, that's really amazing. This is how I discovered an ongoing emotional affair and flirting with colleagues. Oh, going on since D-Day. Okay, never mind. I would not have known about these if I didn't check, as he was telling me he was sober all the time. How can I keep myself safe if he is continuing to lie, if I don't do the detective work? At this stage, we are both wanting to save our relationship. Okay, so now, wow. And that kind of goes back to what you were talking about, and we were talking about too, if you're in that loop where there isn't really trust being built, then it feels like the partner is struggling.
So first of all, I really love the fact that you have an agreement that you can check his emails and messages. I don't see that as inappropriate safety seeking at all. And, and sometimes new information comes up. But I want to kind of backtrack a little bit, and where it might help the two of you would be to go back and really share with him in detail, what do you consider a slip?
Oh, great idea.
What do you consider a relapse? So I have some women that say, if you even stare at a woman, for longer than 3 seconds, that feels like a slip to me. And the addict partner is not even thinking that. And I'm not excusing, what your partner's done, but I think sometimes they rationalize. You've got to understand, they are so good at minimizing, rationalizing, deflecting, all those things that, the betrayed partner oftentimes has to get a lot of clarity and verbalize, here's what it is. Here's what recovery looks like to me, and here's what slips look like to me. And so I think it's okay at times to do the detective work, as long as there's boundaries in place around it. And the boundaries would be, just like you said, I'm allowed to check his emails and his messages. We have total transparency, on our finances. So I can check, the bank activity, or, we've agreed that we're going to have Life 360 on your phone. So I can go and check to see that you're where you say you're going to be. This is part of the rebuilding trust. The goal is that as trust is rebuilt, and it takes time, that then those safety-seeking behaviors are going to kind of slowly go away, because you realize that they're now different, that they're doing life differently. They are open, honest, and transparent in all aspects of their life, not just in their recovery.
Yeah, I love that you backed it up to that, of like, because I was thinking, well, of course, an addict's going like, I'm doing really, really good, and honest, and but oh yeah, like I hear this all the time. Well, it was just TikTok, or I'm just watching YouTube videos, or Instagram or whatever, and it is content that if they had their partner standing there, they wouldn't think was okay, but in their mind, it's just like these it's all fine. That's not my inner circle. So I think it is really good to, to do that. But I also, I was thinking too, it'd be fair to say, when, like, none of us are doing that great all the time. I mean, like, oh my goodness, I mean, that's what the amends process is for in the 12 steps, is because we make mistakes or slip ups or whatever, but we have the opportunity to complete them. It doesn't have to be a slip. I can just have acted not in a way that I want to have acted. However, to have somebody like transform as of D-Day and, have, complete honesty and everything is unrealistic, so I think inviting your partner to be more transparent, more authentic, when you're only showing me the facade, it feels like when you are in active addiction, because you always show just a facade to me. So I want to know the real you, that's where we can really connect and be true. Intimacy is vulnerability. So, Okay, next question is, my porn addict was checking all the boxes and it appeared we were moving forward. Unfortunately, a behavior tipped me off and I went safety seeking and found he had actually relapsed looking at soft porn, and realized he had relapsed and was lying for several months while continuing to go to meetings, etc. Any thoughts? I have fear of being tricked again.
Absolutely. I can totally understand why you've got that fear of being tricked again. It's really interesting. I find that betrayed partners are highly aware of their addict partner's behaviors. And so the addict partner may feel like, oh, I'm fooling them, I'm tricking them. But in reality, your intuition was telling you. And intuition really it's almost like an awareness of the facts. I start connecting the dots. I have a certain feeling. I have that little either voice in my head or that feeling in my body or my gut that says something's wrong. This behavior is not normal. And so it's understandable that you would go safety seeking, because at this point, there's not been a lot of trust built. And now it's kind of like you're back to ground zero, maybe even below zero. And your addict partner's got to determine what they're going to do moving forward to create safety for you around this. So again, having that discussion and going to them and saying, here's what I need for safety. And it might be, we need to put more, monitoring programs in place so that even looking at soft porn isn't an option. And they're going to say things like, yeah, but it makes it so hard to do work and to search things. And you're going to say, yes, I understand that. However, I need this for safety. And so I want you to know that feeling tricked again is a normal feeling and reaction to what you experienced. Again, it's up to the addict partner to start doing their recovery and be open, honest, and transparent, working recovery over time before trust is rebuilt. So at this point, you may approach him and say, you know what, my intuition tells me that you're acting differently, which leads me to tell myself, now I'm in my story and telling them what my story is, that you're acting out in some way. I'm coming to you right now to ask you if my intuition is correct, and be straightforward. And they might go, no, nothing's happening. And you're going to say to them, well, until I know otherwise, I'm going to go with my intuition. And sometimes that might be enough if you can stay grounded, and it's very hard. And I know I have clients come in all the time writing it down to try to figure out, okay, I'm going to go use that and say that. But really honoring your intuition. And at times we do have to go looking, and be okay with that. Sometimes the addict partner is really upset when you do that, but let them know, I'm doing this because I need safety, and I need you to provide safety, and here's what it would look like. And then be very specific.
Well, and that's very different than you talked about the obsessive, and I hate when I hear that the addiction has stolen, the partner's life too, where like there's, it's all focus. I love what you talked about. Like, can you set aside one day or one evening where there's no recovery, talk, no addiction talk, no betrayal talk, all of that, because that, is a little breathing room for both of you. Can you address a little bit more though, because I don't want to get tricked again. And I hear often too the shame of like, like I let this happen to me. And that's what a little bit of that feels like. So can you talk about that a bit?
Yeah. You know, this is something that betrayed partners deal with, not only in a situation that was just shared, but even sometimes our partners have addictions and you go into a relationship with them. Sometimes you even marry them and you don't know. And so you feel tricked that now I'm in this relationship and you had this addiction and you never told me. I didn't have an opportunity to choose and make make a decision with all the information. Or you tell me that you're in recovery and yet you're doing some of these behaviors that would indicate to me you're slipping. And so that feeling tricked is very, very normal. And you can have some shame around that. And that's where I would work with my client on, let's talk about the shame. Let's talk about the reality really of your situation. And then what can we do so that you don't feel like you're being tricked? And so sometimes I just talk about the fact that, yes, this does happen and they are good. Addicts are good. They're good at lying. They're good at hiding things. And if they want to hide something, they will hide it. And that is a really difficult concept for a betrayed partner to understand because they really desperately want to believe their partner, their addict partner. And the thought that, they could still hide stuff, I know it's very difficult. And so that's where I really get the betrayed partner to focus on what they do have control over and what you can do to kind of create as much safety as possible.
So on a practical standpoint, I hear also all the time about people going to meetings. So going to meetings is lovely. And like I, talk to lots of people. That said, the meetings are how we learn to do the steps. So if they're going to 12-step meetings, the point is doing the steps. As we do the 4th through 9th step, that's where the meat of the work is, and that's where we start to see shifts. If we do a searching and fearless moral inventory, which is step 4, and then we do we do those steps, we start to break through that denial. Just going to meetings, and unfortunately, and I hate to say this, but with a lot of the 12-step meetings I've been hearing, especially in the S groups, there's a lot of people that are just going to meetings and they're kind of on a cycle of addiction and they're not really doing the work that will help them shift and change. I also didn't hear with this that they're seeing a qualified professional, that they're doing our work groups. Like we've got the porn addiction 101 work group. They would talk about what is non-porn porn or soft porn or, whatever, and why that is inner circle behavior and what's in the middle circle and what's going on for me over here that makes me think that watching soft porn rather than being accountable and having integrity is a good choice. So all of those things. So and on another thing I hear often is people go to one meeting a week. Well, so you go to one meeting a week, you talk or you listen, you 50 minutes or those are an hour. So you do that, or you go see your therapist, best therapist on the planet, but it's 50 minutes a week. And this addiction is 24/7. So, and it's old. It's, like the dissociation and all compartmentalization that starts long before, usually under age 10. So you think about all that. So it's like, you need to be well armored. You need to be doing the work, in a real and meaningful way to make things shift. So part of it to me, I also hear is there isn't a high enough level of care, for this person to be able to have the tools to really change. And like Debbie said, addicts are really good at lying and manipulating, lying to ourselves, so, oh, it's just a little soft porn, so your healthy boundaries about this, yeah, but I just invite you not to take on the shame of, getting tricked. You got a master manipulator and tricker. So you wouldn't do it. So you would not expect other people to do that either. So. Okay. What do you think about EFT therapy for couples?
I actually really like EFT. I'm trained in EFT, so I love a lot of the concepts. Most of our therapists are trained in that. where I work. And so how we do it in our recovery program is we get people well into their recovery work. And we get them where everything's stabilized. So we're not having slips. The addict is really doing their recovery work. The betrayed partner is very regulated, post, formal therapeutic disclosure. Now we want to bring the couple back together because they can regulate, and we start doing EFT, which stands for emotionally focused therapy. Sue Johnson is the therapist who created emotionally focused therapy, and she's got a lot of good research on that. So I really love it because it gets us out of our distorted perceptions. We identify in our negative cycles, what we have a tendency to do, our behaviors, what our surface emotions are. And then we kind of recognize attachment styles. We have, if we don't have a secure attachment, which we don't have when there's addiction, who's avoidant, which most oftentimes it is the addict, and who's got the anxious attachment. And there's some variations of those attachments. And so we kind of have a tendency to be able to recognize that specific behaviors they're doing. And then we start going deeper. What are the emotions that are really going on here? And then what are the attachment needs? And then you really work on not only identifying your cycle you're in, getting out of it, but then learning how to meet the needs of your partner. So you really work on that, how it looks and how you show up. And so it's a very, very good approach, especially with, the Prodependence model and with recovery from addiction and betrayal trauma.
But you're doing that in conjunction with the individual work, so that so there's a progression and a point where a couple is more able to show up emotionally.
Yeah, and I know oftentimes we do see this a lot. A couple will come in together for couples counseling because, I just found out he's got a porn addiction, or he's been, sexually acting out. And so we're here to get this fixed. And so that's when we explain, we understand you want to fix this. However, you're early in recovery and you could come in every week and we're just going to spin our wheels. So we want you to go do some work, get stabilized, we'll come back together.
Thank you. I say that all the time too, and unfortunately, because couples have gone for months or years doing the couples work, and everything is still chaotic and painful. And so I really love that you go do your work, get support, and then now there's a path to doing that forward. Okay, so my husband has acted out on his work computer. How do I get past safety seeking in that area?
That's a hard one. That came up recently about a work phone.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, somebody, and oftentimes because it's a work, device, they can't put on any of the monitoring, systems. And there's a lot of concerns when your addict partner is acting out using a work computer because they stand the chance of getting caught. So there goes a lot of safety there in regards to, your livelihood. And with that, I'm not sure at this point if you can get beyond the safety seeking unless your addict partner comes up with a plan of action and is very open, working with their therapist, sharing it with you, having a group to support them when they start to get triggered to go, act out on their work computer, an accountability partner, with a 12-step program. They have to create a network of support. And so that might be one of those things. I'm not sure, you didn't mention, kind of the dynamic that you guys are in right now, but is that something that you could take to him and say, hey, here's my fears, here's my concerns, here's what I need. Would you be willing to do this? And see what happens there. But that's a hard one because you're feeling out of control. You can't control it. If it was a computer at home, you have more control over it. The other thing is get your own support. Make sure you've got people that you're going to, because I imagine that this can really activate you, and that there can be a lot of anxiety and fear going on as well.
I would think so, because many companies actually monitor, the computer usage. So yes, and it's in many companies grounds for automatic termination. So beyond the betrayal there's also the fear of like, oh, he could lose his job. So I hope he's in solid recovery. I hope he's doing what he needs to do to for his safety all the way around. So, okay, my SA partner, we've got time for this last question. My SA partner is not yet in recovery. He can acknowledge compulsivity and deceit, but cannot say sex addiction. He refuses all treatment, men's groups, even though both I and his therapist have said he needs an accountability partner who is not me. He has no male friends. He's doing no work groups, no workbooks. I have chronic illness and no physical, emotional capacity to tolerate additional trauma stress. How can I be supportive without worsening my health when only I am getting treatment?
So what I would tell a group member or in my individual, client, and that would be, we're going to start focusing on you and your recovery, because first of all, your body's taken a hit. And I know that you want to be supportive of your partner getting out of denial, recognizing they have addiction and seeking treatment. But it sounds to me like at this point, that's not where your partner's at. So we've got to focus on, for you, who do you have for support? Hopefully you've got a therapist, a CSAT, somebody who understands betrayal trauma through the Prodependence lens, who can support you so you can come up with a plan of action. We want to create for you a network of people that can support you, because your partner's not there and your physical and emotional capacity is very low. So oftentimes we have to turn to other people to help us with that, to help us when we are activated and triggered because our partner's not doing recovery, or we're wanting to jump back in and try to get them to do recovery. So the focus is going to need to be on you. And sometimes you have to work with your therapist on getting to that point where you just surrender that they're not doing recovery, you let it go, and you begin to focus on you. It's not easy. I make it sound easy because it's one or two sentences, but it is a process. But it's so nice for you to have the accountability of a therapist who can help you focusing on your recovery, and you have a support network of people who can then kind of fill your bucket, right? When your capacity is very, very low.
And please, I'm thrilled you're here, but please lean into the various betrayed partner drop-in groups too. There's lots of great support there. We have the betrayed partner work group starting again March 1st. So on the Seeking Integrity site under the work group tab, you'll see that. And beyond the content, which is about healthy boundaries and all of those other things, all from a prodependent lens, you would also have peers to connect with, in that group as well. So, so lean into your resources. Like I often hear, how can I, be supportive and compassionate for the addict? Like, take care of you, like you value you, because unfortunately the addict is in a place where they can do that. So value you, set healthy boundaries, to take care of you, but lean into the resources, please. So Debbie, it was great to see you. Thanks
You
everybody.
too. I missed you.
Great questions. Yeah, likewise. So, okay. Thanks everybody. See you
Bye.
next time for
Have
part
a great
2.
couple of weeks.
Bye-bye.